If you've spent the last few evenings scrolling through endless gaming PC builds, comparing benchmarks, looking at Pricito performance charts, and still feel a little stuck, you're not alone. It's easy to get overwhelmed when the market throws a new name brand at you every few weeks, promising 4K ultra smoothness and future-proof specs. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this video, I'm going to break down the Skytech Chronos 3 and see if it actually lives up to the hype, or if you'd be better off building something else. First off, let's talk about who this machine is really built for. The Chronos 3 ships with an Intel Core i5-14400F, a mid-range processor that hits 4.7 GHz on turbo. Pair that with an RTX 5060 16GB GDDR7 card, 16 GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 1TB Gen4 SSD. And you have a rig that sits squarely in the sweet spot for 1080p 144Hz and decent 1440p performance. If you're a gamer who wants to play titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, or Fortnite at high settings without breaking the bank, this is a solid match. It also works well for creators who dabble in video editing or 3D rendering on the side. Those workloads benefit from the extra VRAM on the GPU and the fast storage, but you won't be pushing into the heavy-duty workstation tier. Now, who should walk away? If you're chasing ultra-high refresh 4K gaming on a 240Hz monitor, the i5-14400F and RTX 5060 Ti will start to feel cramped. The card is a step below the RTX 3060 Ti in raw rasterization power, and the CPU, while very capable, doesn't have the extra cores you'd find on an i7 or i9 that some modern titles begin to leverage for physics or AI. Also, if you plan to upgrade the GPU down the line, the stock 650W power supply that comes with this Skytech model may limit your options. You'd likely need to replace it anyway. In short, the Chronos 3 isn't the best choice for the extreme-end enthusiast who wants to future-proof for the next 3 to 5 years. Let's dive into the practical strengths that show up once you plug it in. The 1TB Gen4 SSD is a noticeable upgrade over the more common SATA drives you see in budget pre-builts. Games load in seconds, and the OS boots almost instantly. I tested a fresh install of Valorant and a large open-world title, and the difference was obvious. Texture popping was virtually non-existent, and level transitions felt fluid. The high-performance air cooler that ships with the unit does a respectable job keeping the i5 under 70°C during long gaming sessions, which means you won't hear that constant fan whine that some cheap pre-builts have. Another practical win is the lack of bloatware. Skytech advertises no bloatware, and indeed the system comes with a clean Windows 11 install and just the essential drivers. That saves you a few minutes of uninstalling trial software that often hides in the start menu. The Wi-Fi 5, 802.11ac connectivity is solid for most apartments, and the single HDMI and DisplayPort output cover the typical dual monitor setup without needing an adapter. For people who live in small spaces and want a tidy desk, the tower's footprint is modest, around 17 inches tall, so it fits under most desks without crowding. On the flip side, there are a few hidden trade-offs you need to be aware of. The case itself uses a standard mid-tower design with a tempered glass side panel, which looks nice but doesn't help much with acoustics. The high-performance cooler does its job, but the overall system can still be audible when the GPU spikes in a high load during intense fight scenes. If you're sensitive to noise, you might want to add a fan controller or consider a quieter aftermarket cooler. Also, the RAM is 16 GB of DDR5, which is a future-oriented choice, but the sticks are clocked at a relatively modest 3,200 MHz. In most games you won't notice a bottleneck, but certain memory-intensive applications could benefit from faster kits. One area where the Chronos 3 stands out is the price point relative to the component list. At its current retail price, you're essentially paying for the convenience of a pre-built system that's already assembled, tested, and ready to run out of the box. If you were to buy each part separately, you'd be looking at a higher total cost once you factor in a quality case, power supply, and the time spent assembling. For people who don't want to wrestle with cable management or worry about BIOS updates, this pre-built removes a lot of friction. I also spent some time looking at community feedback on forums and Reddit threads where people discuss Skytech builds. The consensus is that Skytech provides decent after-sales support, especially when it comes to RMA processes for defective components. That's an intangible value you don't get when you buy individual parts and have to chase multiple vendors. However, a few users mentioned that the warranty paperwork can be a bit generic, so keep the purchase receipt handy and double-check the coverage period before you need it. If you're a casual gamer who enjoys streaming on Twitch a few times a week, the built-in